SpongeBob SquarePants is a cartoon that everyone knows the history of. We all know who created it, we all know why he created it, and we all know its insurmountable legacy and the impact it had on animated television in general. So, let me start this video with a different thesis. SpongeBob SquarePants is a cartoon that everyone has an opinion on. Die-hard fans who love every season of the show, casual viewers who have only seen select episodes, people who only like the first 3 seasons, people who are growing up on the current seasons, even people who have never seen a single episode have an opinion on SpongeBob SquarePants. Look, reviewing every episode of this long-running cartoon is hardly a new idea, I know. But I am a firm believer that a video idea is only as good as its YouTuber. No two people are going to have the exact same opinions on everything, and no two people are going to present those opinions in the exact same way. If you've known me for a while, you'll know that I absolutely adore SpongeBob. It's my favorite cartoon of all time, and obsessing over it is kind of the personality trait that a lot of people associate me with, for better or worse. What is my life? I can't think of a better way to pay tribute than giving a retrospective on every single square inch of this show, reviewing every season and ranking the episodes as I go on. I have talked about the show before in review format, which I have thankfully scrubbed off the face of the earth. It was really bad. But this will give me the perfect opportunity to cover everything. Every season, every episode, all the movies, all the spin-offs. Basically how this will work is that I'll give an episode a score out of 10, and then show you, the audience, where it'll go on my season ranking. Full disclosure, there isn't a single season of this show that I outright dislike, by the way, so if that bothers you for some reason, I don't know, cry about it, I guess. Season 1 will definitely be interesting to talk about. It's definitely the most unique season of the entire show from both a visual and writing perspective, for what I'd assume are obvious reasons. We have 41 individual episodes to cover here today, so let's not waste any more time. Welcome to my enormous SpongeBob SquarePants retrospective. Season 1 edition, baby! I would do the whole "Are you ready, kids?" bit, but I'm not unfunny, so fuck you. Pilot episodes of cartoons are usually some of my favorites. They're basically just glorified pitches at the end of the day, an opportunity for a team of artists to make a splash in the realm of animation. SpongeBob is no exception to this at all. I really like Help Wanted. As an 8-minute pilot episode that introduces you to this world as well as introducing the premise for the entire show, I think it does a wonderful job, despite the fact that it doesn't introduce everything right away. All we need to know for now is that SpongeBob is a sea sponge who lives inside of a pineapple house in an underwater town called Bikini Bottom. He happily works as the fry cook at a fast food restaurant. He has a pet snail named Gary, a dumb but supportive sea star best friend named Patrick, a grouchy and narcissistic neighbor/coworker octopus named Squidward, and a greedy, money-obsessed boss named Mr. Krabs. It is both simultaneously the bare fucking minimum, but also the perfect amount of world building for a pilot. It's just really charming, and that's the best way I can describe it. Help Wanted proved that SpongeBob SquarePants is a cartoon that has an animation style, a sense of humor, and an atmosphere that no other cartoon has ever been able to replicate since. Steven Hillenburg and crew really managed to capture lightning in a bottle here, and it shows. Help Wanted is an 8 out of 10, and it's going at number 22 on my ranking. The fact that an episode in the exact middle of this ranking is an 8 out of 10 should be a very good sign, actually. Holy shit, wow. Yo, this is peak dialogue humor, guys! Reef Blower's existence is really funny to me. Because they made Help Wanted slightly shorter than the standard 11-minute time slot, they had to quickly produce what is by a large margin the shortest and simplest episode of the entire series. It's the only episode in the entire show that has no dialogue whatsoever. And no, SpongeBob theorists, it's not because their sound equipment wasn't working. That was a rumor that turned out to be false. If I were to describe Reef Blower in one phrase, it'd be short but sweet. 7 out of 10, and it goes on number 28 on my ranking. This is fun so far. Let's see what we have next. Oh. Well, there goes the good momentum they had building up. Yeah, sorry guys, but I don't really like At The Treedome very much. I don't hate it or anything, it's definitely got good qualities, mainly for the fact that it introduces another main character into the show, Sandy Cheeks, a squirrel from the surface world who dons a spacesuit and lives in a tree dome in Bikini Bottom, who is both tough and smart thanks to her interests in both karate and science, and is a country girl whose home state is Texas. As much as I love to make fun of Sandy, she's actually one of my favorite characters. I'm always happy to see her whenever she shows up. Originally, Sandy was planned to be sort of a love interest for SpongeBob, but this was thankfully dropped very quickly. I just think their dynamic works way better as them being really close friends, especially those rare instances of them being on the same wavelength and acting silly together. I love it so much. Anyways, back to Mid. This is one of those episodes where they basically run one annoying-ass joke into the ground over and over again and expect you to find it funny. That joke being, SpongeBob can't breathe in Sandy's tree dome, and Sandy is somehow oblivious to this. I thought she was supposed to be the smart character. Stupid bitch-ass squirrel. And because Season 1's pacing is so slow compared to other seasons, they don't get any opportunities to put any variation on said joke. At The Treedome is a 6 out of 10 and goes right to number 36 on my list. One of my least favorite episodes of the season, but still not a bad one, and I think that says a lot. Also, I'm not even gonna get into how the SpongeBob spin-off Camp Coral would later retcon this entire episode's existence, but we'll get there when we get there. You're going to hear me bring this up over and over again throughout this video, but Season 1 is the most atmospheric season in the series, and I think Bubblestand is one of the strongest examples of this. This is also the first episode where Squidward is heavily involved with the story, and this right here is the episode that laid the entire foundation of Squidward's character, as well as laying out the blueprints of his interactions with SpongeBob and Patrick going forward. SpongeBob and Patrick will be doing something silly or annoying, and Squidward, mostly against his will, ends up getting involved. This is also the first episode of the series that introduces one of SpongeBob's main personality traits, the fact that he likes to blow bubbles. That is such a simple concept, but it's now become synonymous with SpongeBob's character, and I think that's pretty cool. Bubblestand isn't one of the most entertaining episodes ever. A lot of it is really slow, but not in a bad way. Like Help Wanted, it's still pretty decently charming. 7 out of 10, going at number 24 on my list. By the way, if you haven't already, go watch the video of Squidward screaming at the bubble in different languages. It's really goddamn funny. Paul Tibbitt's name is misspelled in the opening credits, and I think that's hysterical. This is another At The Treedome situation where the entire episode is dedicated to running one joke into the ground over and over again. Except this time it's not as obnoxious because that's the entire point of the episode. Still doesn't make it very good though. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this one either, sadly. If you don't find the idea of SpongeBob tearing his trousers over and over again to be funny, then congratulations, you're a normal person. They even get the lesson at the end completely wrong somehow. I thought the lesson was supposed to be that using a joke over and over with little to no variation is wrong. But no, apparently it was be yourself. What are you, Sandy, a dumbass? Ripped Pants is a first for a lot of things. It's the first episode where we get to see background characters. It's the first episode to introduce tertiary character and muscle-bound dude bro, Larry the Lobster. It's the first episode to introduce recurring location Goo Lagoon, and it's also the first episode with an original song. All these aspects bring this episode up to be about average. It's a 6 out of 10 and it'll be going on number 34 on my list. If you want an episode where SpongeBob does something over and over again to the annoyance of others, there's an episode that we'll get to much later that executes this concept brilliantly. Jellyfishing and Bubblestand are two episodes that I always associate with each other in my head. They're both episodes about introducing us to one of SpongeBob and Patrick's main interests, this time being jellyfishing, and getting Squidward involved where he gets massively injured throughout the whole runtime for basically no reason. Yeah, full transparency, I don't think Squidward necessarily has to deserve the terrible shit that happens to him in order for it to work. Like, literally all he does is make slightly sarcastic comments towards the main duo, which results in him falling off a cliff, getting burned by hot soup, getting stabbed through his hand, and getting stung to death by a giant jellyfish. And you know what? It's funny! Unlike what pre-movie dick suckers want you to believe, it shouldn't matter whether or not the torment of a character is morally deserved or not. As long as it's funny and well written, then who the hell cares? But no, people won't point fingers at this episode because it's from pre-movie! Anyways, yeah, jellyfishing is good. 7 out of 10, number 27 on my list. It's really cool to see how this is where Jellyfish Fields got its start in the show, which is arguably the most iconic recurring location in all of SpongeBob. I know a lot of these early reviews have just been me saying, "This is the episode that introduces X thing." But like, bro, what else do you expect from me? That's literally a first season's job, to introduce the show. This time we're introduced to the show's main villain, Sheldon Plankton. This microscopic menace is the direct competitor to Mr. Krabs, running a not-so-successful restaurant across the street called the Chum Bucket, which serves exclusively chum. Gee, Plankton, I wonder why no one wants to eat there. You're supposed to be the smartest character in the entire show, yet sometimes you have the IQ of Patrick. Plankton's whole gimmick throughout the entire series is that he's extremely jealous of Mr. Krabs' success with the Krusty Krab. So he spends most of his starring episodes trying to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, so that he can run Mr. Krabs out of business, and eventually rule the world, of course. Plankton is the only character for me whose status quo can get a little bit old at times, but his personality more than makes up for it. He is so funny, helped by the fact that he is voiced to villainous perfection by Doug Lawrence, who is also a writer on the show and is one of the writers on this episode. I also like how his first ever starring role involves him trying to steal the formula by controlling SpongeBob's brain from the inside. It shows us that while Plankton may be tiny and annoying, he's still a force to be reckoned with. Plankton, the episode, is great and one of my favorites of season 1. Apparently Plankton wasn't even meant to be the show's main villain. The crew only wanted him to be a fun little one-off character at first, but they ended up liking him so much that they just kept him around. That's awesome. 9 out of 10, number 13 on my list. I mean, how could I not think highly of the episode that introduces one of the most iconic cartoon bad guys of all time? It even has Plankton's lab! He's a good boy! Naughty Nautical Neighbors needs newfound nuanced appreciation now. That was a lot of alliteration, what the hell? I feel like this type of premise, you know, the two main characters getting into a wacky argument and splitting up, would be extremely cringe in most other cartoons, but because it's SpongeBob, a show that values its comedy above all else, it manages to be really fucking funny. This is also the first episode to feature involvement from who we now know as legendary titans in the animation industry, Aaron Springer and Sherm Cohen. Aaron Springer being a writer and storyboard artist on the show up until season 8, and Sherm Cohen being a writer for season 1, a storyboard supervisor for seasons 2 through 4, and returning to the show for season 9 onwards as a director. As the show goes on, we're going to see these two, especially Aaron Springer, develop both their art style and senses of humor to make it something completely their own. Naughty Nautical Neighbors takes what could have been an annoying and predictable episode, and turns it into something hysterical and even a little sweet. It's a very high 9 out of 10. Goes to number 12 on my list.
I feel like I need to scrub myself.
Hey, buddy. I warmed it up for you. Why?
Oh wow, I forgot the first My Leg gag of the show came this early. Not a lot of people bring this up, but boating school is one of the most important episodes of the show's entire history. Basically, the story goes that Nickelodeon wanted to make SpongeBob a kid and put him in a school setting. Steven Hillenburg was extremely against this and was about to walk out on them. This is also a huge point of contention people use to justify hating the spin-offs, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So Steven's way to work around this was to put SpongeBob in the underwater equivalent of a driving school, with the status quo being that SpongeBob is a cartoonishly terrible driver who can never get his boating license. Of course, Steven would have to create a whole new character for this, so he made Mrs. Puff, a pufferfish with a passion for driving that's about as big as her criminal record. Not a lot of people talk about this, but Mrs. Puff's existence kinda helped save the show, which makes me like her even more. Full stop, Mrs. Puff is one of my personal favorite characters. Here you have a group of characters whose collective insanity points could reach a skyscraper, but Mrs. Puff alone doubles that. I love her two-faced attitude, being a caring motherly figure who really cares about her students, and an insane psychopath with a really dark hidden past. And I'm happy to say that her debut episode is really good. I love her dynamic with SpongeBob, and it's just a really solid introduction to the boating school concept as a whole. 8 out of 10, going to number 18 on my list. The words pizza delivery and iconic are pretty synonymous with each other. Every SpongeBob season has one singular episode that is pretty much the face of that entire season. You know, basically reaches the previously mentioned iconic status. Pizza Delivery is that episode for season 1. And yeah, I can't say I don't agree with the majority here. Pizza Delivery is one of my favorite episodes of season 1. This is the first episode of the entire show that revolves around SpongeBob and Squidward interacting with each other for the whole runtime. And let's just say there's a reason these two have the best character dynamic out of any two characters in the entire show. You know that you have some amazing characters on your hands when you can put them literally in the middle of butt-fuck nowhere with nothing but a pizza box and empty stomachs, and they still manage to be extremely entertaining. This is the first real SpongeBob and Squidward dynamic episode, yet it feels like the one where its formula is stripped down to its bare essentials, and it still works. We even have a rare instance of Squidward standing up for SpongeBob, and that's awesome. Also, Doug Lawrence proves why he's one of the greatest voice actors of all time.
My drink? My Diet Dr. Kelp? Don't tell me you forgot my drink!
But you didn't order any.
How am I supposed to eat this pizza without my drink?
Of course this is another episode to feature Aaron Springer and Sherm Cohen as two of its writers. Pizza Delivery is our first real 10 out of 10 episode, going at number 5 on the list. Yippee! It is completely carried by how much I love the dynamic between our main duo. Also, it involves pizza, which is like peak food, so you know, there's that. Contrasting one of my longest reviews so far, here's one of my shortest. Home Sweet Pineapple is boring. There's some really creative home building gags, and I like how this is the first episode to feature SpongeBob's parents, as well as the nematodes. But did we really need a 3-minute long sequence of SpongeBob trying to fall asleep? How about a horribly off-model Squidward? Whatever. 6 out of 10, going right to number 33 on my list. What a pace breaker.
I guess I'll have to move back with my mom and dad.
No. Wait a minute. No, you don't.
Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy is yet another character introduction episode. This time being of, who else, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. A super old superhero duo who are currently retired and live in an old folks home. This is a weirdly really common Nicktoons trope for some reason, to have one of the supporting characters be a superhero parody. Mermaid Man obviously being a take on Aquaman. I don't know anything about Aquaman and have never cared for anything superhero related before, so go off I guess. But yeah, I love these bastards so much. This might be my favorite take on this Nicktoons trope. They're just a couple of old and confused farts who are quite possibly the funniest characters in the entire show. Mermaid Man especially makes me laugh myself to death. He is so consistently hysterical anytime he is on screen, ever. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy is one of the funniest episodes so far. That bit at the end where Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are attacking SpongeBob and Patrick, but they see it as some sort of fun game, is endlessly charming. God, Season 1 is so charming! Another very high 9 out of 10 goes to number 10 on my list. Rest in peace, Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway. Thank you for bringing these wonderful characters to life.
I'll have the Krabby Patty. How original.
Shut the fuck up!
Pickles is yet another character introduction, but not in the way that you'd think. Here we're introduced to this fat-ass fish, Bubble Bass, who is the local town nerd / food snob. I don't know if this is true at all, but I remember hearing that Bubble Bass was initially conceived to be a recurring rival character for SpongeBob, before he became just a one-off character in Season 1. But then they actually reintroduced him into the show in the post-sequel seasons as another secondary character. Good! Thank you! Take any chance you can to make fun of Redditors. They deserve no rights! Outside of introducing one of the greatest characters in all of fiction, what else does Pickles do? It's just really funny! I know I keep saying this, but Pickles might be the funniest episode in Season 1 so far. In fact, it might just be the funniest episode in Season 1, period. This scene alone deserves an award. 10 out of 10, number 8 on the list. The comedy king of Season 1, ladies and gentlemen. Mrs. Puff gives SpongeBob hall monitor duties at boating school, but SpongeBob's inspirational speech runs through the entire day, so Mrs. Puff lets him keep the outfit. I love how this episode subverts the character abuses their use of power shtick that most other cartoons would have done, and instead have the conflict be that SpongeBob thinks he's better at being a hall monitor than he actually is. Fits in better with the obliviousness of his character. This is also the episode where the line, "Calm down, son, it's just a drawing," comes from. So thanks for giving stupid creeps weak-ass ammunition to defend against criticism. Hall Monitor is really good though. It's an 8 out of 10, and it'll be going on number 21 on my list.
Okay, now what?
This episode is notable for being the first episode in the series to use CGI and digital animation, as well as being notable for the visual treat that is the dance party ending! Woo! Even though it's not the ending, it's the middle of the episode, but shut up. This is the first in a long line of episodes where SpongeBob befriends some sort of wild animal-like creature to varying results. This one's not one of my favorites, but it's still good. The seizure-inducing dance farty is really the only truly notable thing about it though. It is really visually exciting. 7 out of 10, number 26 on the list, which puts it right above the first Jellyfishing episode. Huh. This is just the Among Us episode. Cool. I don't know, this is an episode I've never ever liked, even when I was really young. I always thought it was really lame how they don't actually travel to the moon, they just think they traveled there. Ooh, fuck off. It gets extremely obnoxious when they start capturing everyone in Bikini Bottom because they think they're alien doppelgangers or something. What the fuck? Why? Oh boy, I sure do love how they don't actually go to the moon until literally the last few seconds! Did they just not have the budget for an episode of this scale back then? Oh wait, no, that wouldn't make any sense because episodes like SB129 exist. I usually don't mind when SpongeBob and Patrick are extremely oblivious, but the way they do it here just comes across as cock-teasing the audience. And that sucks because I actually really like the first half of the episode. The scenes where SpongeBob and Patrick are messing around in Sandy's rocket ship are really silly and fun. But after that, the episode literally and figuratively crash lands and never really recovers. This one's lame. 5 out of 10, number 38 on the list. For an episode called Sandy's Rocket, Sandy herself barely does shit in it. Way to tease us with an actually really fun outer space adventure, assholes. This is the first episode where Mr. Krabs' whale daughter Pearl appears. Neat. Anyways, this one is weird because I can usually tolerate other episodes of the show that rely on annoying audio as the main source of its humor, but sorry to say, Squeaky Boots really does not click with me. It's so unpleasant on the ears. I can at least excuse this one a bit though, cause it was one of the very first episodes made for the show, back when the writers were trying to nail the characters and the tone going forward. Maybe that's why Mr. Krabs himself feels so off here? Though, to be fair, the Season 1 version of Mr. Krabs feels like a completely different character than every other version of him. The only parts I liked were the visuals when Mr. Krabs was going insane. This is going to be a heavily recurring element to SpongeBob as a show. You know, insanity! So it's interesting to see where it got its start, at least. It's personally what I consider to be the least bad SpongeBob episode ever, probably. 3 out of 10. Number 40 on the list. This is another one I've never liked. The fact that there's one other episode this season that I consider worse scares me. And here we have Nature Pants, an episode that is so mid in every single sense of the word that I would like to introduce Midword, a rating I plan on using once every season to describe an episode that is so dull, so boring, and so void of anything to talk about that I have no choice but to summon him. And don't confuse mid with bad, this episode isn't so boring to the point of pissing me off. We'll get a lot of those episodes later down the line, trust me. And it does have a funny scene or two.
Here, use this!
But as it is, 5 out of 10, number 37 on the list. Thank you for showing up, Midword. You're doing God's work. I could do something really corny and stupid right now and say the opposite of what my actual opinion on this episode is, but no, I won't, because I'm not unfunny. I said I'm not unfunny! Opposite Day is really solid. It's another SpongeBob and Patrick annoy Squidward episode, and yet another one where Squidward doesn't really deserve everything that's thrown at him, despite what pre-movie dick writers want to tell you. Because on the one hand, you could say, oh, well, Squidward just made up a little white lie to have SpongeBob and Patrick leave him alone, so of course he doesn't deserve it. But on the other hand, you could also say, that asshole Squidward just fooled SpongeBob and Patrick all because they wanted to celebrate his birthday, so of course he deserves it. It doesn't bother me, though. A very high 7 out of 10, number 23 on the list. When I was a kid, I was really confused by SpongeBob saying that Squidward had a wild man-eating clam in his backyard, because I misinterpreted it as Squidward having an actual human man in his backyard who eats clams. I was a really stupid kid. I feel like Culture Shock is an episode I should find extremely obnoxious. You know, with the whole Squidward does one thing and gets shit for it, but SpongeBob does the exact same thing and gets praised for it bit, but I don't know, something about this one just clicks with me a lot. I always forget how little of Season 1's episodes take place at the Krusty Krab, so this one is actually a nice breath of fresh air. It's really fun to see a bunch of different characters get together and perform their talent show acts. Honestly, I feel like this episode could be a really solid introduction to someone who's never seen the show before. It pretty much establishes almost everything perfectly. 9 out of 10, number 15 on the list. Really great one here. Though I never understood why this episode was called Culture Shock. I guess it's because Squidward wants to inject some culture into Bikini Bottom, but couldn't you have come up with a title that had more to do with the actual talent show, like, I don't know, guys, I'm not good with coming up with stuff on the spot, shut up.
Perhaps not, Monsieur Krabs, for it's SpongeBob SquarePants!
F.U.N is one of my favorite episodes so far. Not only is it really, really funny, not only does it have one of the most iconic and banger songs of the entire show, but it's the first episode to solely focus on SpongeBob and Plankton's dynamic, which is my second favorite character dynamic in the entire show outside of SpongeBob and Squidward's. I usually can't stand episodes of cartoons where the villain seems like they might have a turnaround because they almost always end the exact same predictable ass way. And this one is no exception, but I don't know, this one just seems like more about the journey and not the destination. You genuinely get a feeling that, even though Plankton was faking it the whole time, SpongeBob's influence definitely had some kind of effect on him. I always forget how seldom Plankton is used in the pre-movie seasons, compared to later on when they start using him more, but almost every single appearance of his in these seasons is really good. 10 out of 10, number 7 on the list. Bubble Bass even reappears in this episode briefly, and that is epic. Okay, I promise that Sandy is a really good character who appears in a lot of really good episodes. It just so happens that every episode she has had a major role in so far hasn't been very good. The pre-movie seasons had this really weird running gag of SpongeBob being so cartoonishly weak, specifically in comparison to Sandy for some reason, and the results end up being mixed. SpongeBob gets inflatable muscle arms to impress Sandy, but they don't actually make him stronger. They're just for show. For what it is, this one isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just kind of cringe and annoying to see SpongeBob try to keep up this lie that we all know is going to end up biting him in the ass later. If I wanted to watch an episode about SpongeBob getting strong, I would just watch Larry's Gym from Season 9, which is an episode we'll get to much later. The only strong thing about this episode is the guy from the Anchor Arms commercial. Now he's a real Chadvertiser. 6 out of 10, number 35 on the list. And here we have another episode where the plot revolves around a character lying about something and having to keep up the lie throughout the entire episode, only for it to bite him in the ass. The difference? This one is actually funny. Like, really funny.
SpongeBob, I have a confession to make.
You're bald?
No, I'm not bald! I'm alive!
Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost made me laugh so much that I actually died and became a ghost myself. Yes, this is actually my ghost reviewing this episode. Hello. You know your episode is good when it's featured in the background of the 2019 hit classic Pet Sematary. Is that movie actually good? Because I don't know, I was just doing a bit. 9 out of 10, number 11 on my list. The first episode in the series to be about ghosts, but definitely not the last. And here we have the first episode of the series where Pearl is the main character. It's decent. Pearl is one of those characters who I feel like I should absolutely hate, since she's basically just a bratty teenage girl stereotype, but as we'll see later down the line, she surprisingly holds up a lot of her own episodes really, really well. This one's not one of my favorites or anything, but I mean, come on, it has the Do the Sponge song, so that's gotta count for something, right? It also has the scene with this fucking apple, and this fucking apple is just here, and it's hilarious, I love it. 7 out of 10, number 31 on the list. Employee of the Month is the first, and as far as I'm aware, only episode of the entire series which involves SpongeBob and Squidward competing directly against each other. And you know what? It's amazing! SpongeBob and Squidward are such a brilliant duo of characters that even when they are at each other's throats, guns a-blazing, it's still extremely entertaining to watch. We even get to see another instance in the show of absolute bedlam and insanity. The ending where SpongeBob and Squidward go absolutely fucking insane and start wrecking up the Krusty Krab is probably my favorite scene in all of Season 1. It just has a manic energy to it that has rarely ever been recaptured on the show.
This is Mr. Krab.
I eat this shit up like sponge cake, guys. You guys have no idea. 10 out of 10. Number 6 on my list. Something you'll soon come to realize about me is that I have a huge bias towards episodes that revolve around characters slowly losing their sanity. That probably shows some kind of defect in my own personality, but oh well. What the fuck? Ooh, it's the first Halloween special. Ooh, even though it's only 11 minutes, so it's not really a special. Ooh. Halloween is a holiday that I keep flip-flopping on. One year I'll think I'm too old to celebrate it, and the next year I'll be wearing the most femboy outfit you have ever seen. This episode's story really isn't anything too special. It's just the typical character doesn't want to be scared on Halloween thing. But this one is completely and utterly held up by its charm, great Halloween atmosphere, and the introduction of the Flying Dutchman, who's one of my favorite secondary characters. Yes, I know he was mentioned in Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost, but he didn't actually appear in that one, so fuck off. A high 7 out of 10, number 25 on my list. Did you know that it would take the show up until season 11 to do a proper 22-minute Halloween special? I know I keep mentioning episodes from future seasons, but that really does go to show how far the series has come since its humble beginnings. Also, Sandy's costume is basically the underwater equivalent to blackface, which,
What are you supposed to be?
Why, I'm a pet goldfish in a bowl.
Yeah, Sandy, that is, that's just awful. Shame on you. Oh boy, it's the show's first Gary-focused episode. If you're wondering why I sound so unenthusiastic, it's because Gary episodes are infamous for being some of the worst episodes in the entire show. And while I wouldn't go as far with this one, I can easily see why it's Season 1's most infamous episode. I think the main issue is that this episode is torn between too many different ideas. It's more confused than the really confused guy. I don't know, not all my metaphors can be winners. Is it an episode about Squidward babysitting Gary? An episode about Gary getting sick? An episode about SpongeBob getting injected with snail plasma? Fucking pick one, goddammit! Whatever. It's a very low 5 out of 10, and number 39 on my list. One of my least favorites from Season 1. The admittedly really creepy body horror stuff where SpongeBob turns into a snail saves it from being outright shit.
Shut the fuck up.
Well, gamers, we did it. Our first ever favorite episode has finally arrived. SB129 is an episode that scared the piss out of a really young me, but it has stuck to me like glue for years. I am an absolute sucker for time travel stories, and this one genuinely might be one of my favorites in all of fiction. Not only is it the first ever episode where SpongeBob himself barely appears, but it's also the first episode to get extremely experimental and unapologetically dark. Even the title card creeps me out.
SB129.
Ugh. SB129 just has this aura about it where everything feels slightly off in a way that I can't really describe, but in a way that adds to the experience. There's not a single other episode in the entire show like it, and that makes it really special. I love the atmospheres of the different time periods Squidward travels to. I love the different versions of Sponge and Pat that he meets, and I love how this is one of the first episodes that reveals that, while he does find them really annoying, deep down, Squidward really cares about SpongeBob and Patrick. 10 out of 10. Easily my favorite episode of the season, and a true masterpiece. Thank you, Aaron Springer, Eric Wise, and Mr. Lawrence, for creating an episode that truly feels out of this world.
Do you think Mr. Krabs ever does karate?
Oh my god, finally, an actually good Sandy appearance. Remember when SpongeBob and Sandy were actually equally matched in karate? Yeah, that's an idea that they would grind under their heels after this very episode. It's just really, really fun to see SpongeBob and Sandy constantly trying to one-up each other. Also, fun fact, the scene where Tom Kenny plays a live-action drop of hot sauce was filmed in the Nickelodeon bathrooms. Have fun with that useless piece of trivia that will occupy your brain space until the day you die. I know I will. Karate Choppers is amazing. One of my favorite episodes of Season 1. 9 out of 10. Number 9 on the list. Another fun fact, actually. This is the first episode to have involvement from pre-movie writer Meriwether Williams, who would later go on to work on shows like Camp Lazlo and Adventure Time. Cool. I like that.
What time is it?
Time for you to shut up!
Oh my god, Sickles, I think we're just at that point in Season 1 where they just produce banger after banger. Holy crap. Going inside the dreams of others is one of my favorite concepts in all of media. Mario and Luigi Dream Team is one of my favorite Mario games, and most cartoons that do this premise end up nailing it perfectly.
Dream! Forget the dang dream!
And yeah, Sleepy Time is no exception to this. It's another one of my favorites of the entire show. I'm legitimately impressed with the amount of variety on display. In this short 11 minutes, we get to visit the dreams of SpongeBob, Gary, Patrick, Squidward, Sandy, Mr. Krabs, Pearl, and even Plankton. This is also by far the most visually impressive episode of Season 1. The variety in the backgrounds is seriously impressive for late 90s cell animation. And it's the first episode of SpongeBob that I can comfortably describe as visual eye sex. Obviously a 10 out of 10. Number 3 on my list.
3?
I'd like to go Sleepy Time myself because I'm tired of reviewing all these episodes, but I still have quite a few to go. Anyways, Sud! I think a majority of people can agree when I say that being sick is a bitch. A lot of cartoons that do this type of premise end up making it as gross and unpleasant as possible. Why? Just because being sick in real life is gross and unpleasant doesn't mean you have to take the same approach in a cartoon. SpongeBob, of course, takes the opposite approach because he is a chatterpillar, choosing instead to focus on the episode's comedy of the wacky ways Patrick tries to cure SpongeBob, as well as his really weird but really entertaining rivalry with Sandy. Which is, again, another character dynamic we will never see again after this. Suds is really good. It takes what could have been an uncomfortable experience and turns it into something fun. Very high 8 out of 10, number 16 on the list. This episode is pretty sick, but I mean that in the best sense of the word.
I can smell again!
Valentine's Day is a really interesting one. Not only is it the only Valentine's-themed episode in the entire show, but it's also the first episode to make Patrick a huge prick. Except unlike certain future episodes, even other pre-movie episodes, they actually give Patrick justifiable reason to be upset. He just wanted to spend the day with his best friend and was also promised the greatest Valentine's Day gift ever. But not only does SpongeBob keep dividing his attention between too many people, but the amazing Valentine's Day gift he promised Patrick turned out to be a huge letdown. Like, yeah, if I was Patrick, I'd be pissed off too. I also just love the purple and pink skies in the opening sequence. I really wish the entire episode looked like this visually. It would have helped it stand out a lot more. 8 out of 10, going to number 20 on my list. I don't love this episode like the holiday itself probably wants me to, but it's still really good. 4 hearts out of 5.
Hey, is that solid chocolate?
Patrick, no!
10 out of 10. Number 4 on my list. We're just diving straight into this one. I think out of every single episode in the entire show, this one does the best job at stating what SpongeBob is all about in my opinion. With a premise as literally paper thin as SpongeBob plays with a piece of paper for 11 minutes, they cram so much charm and positive energy out of it. This is one of those episodes that reminds me why SpongeBob himself is one of my favorite fictional characters. He can take literally the most boring and mundane thing in the goddamn world and turn it into something magical and entertaining. He's just a goofy little guy who sees the good in literally everything. He just wants to spread that positivity to everyone around him, even if they don't want it or deserve it. For an episode that takes place in one singular location, it is paper jammed with so many visual gags and sweet little moments. Damn, if I got this excited over a singular piece of paper, I'd be the happiest person on the planet. This is also one of those episodes where the SpongeBob and Squidward dynamic is at its peak. I know people say that episodes like Pizza Delivery should be studied, and while that is true, I think this episode should also be part of that conversation. It is an absolute masterclass in simple but excellent character interactions and really great visual humor. An episode that seems flat as paper, but doesn't fall flat like it at all. Incredible.
Look, I'm Peggy the pirate.
I'm Blind Beard the pirate. Oop.
I think we can all agree that pirates as a concept are just inherently cool, so having one of the main motifs of your underwater cartoon be pirate themed was a really inspired choice, honestly. This is kind of another pizza delivery situation where you know your characters are entertaining and likable when you can literally plop them in the middle of butt-fuck nowhere and they still remain entertaining. I wish we had more episodes that played into the swashbuckling pirate side of Mr. Krabs' personality. I can only think of like 2 other ones off the top of my head. Also, I wish there was more to the pirate adventure than just SpongeBob and Patrick and Mr. Krabs walking around the middle of nowhere, but oh well. 8 out of 10, number 17 on my list. Also, get your homework notes out because this episode has a couple more firsts for us. It's the first episode to be worked on by Ren and Stimpy artist Vincent Waller, who will be important for later. And it's also the first episode to confirm that the fish behind the My Leg running gag is this guy, Fred, which will also be important for later.
Rev up those fryers, cause I am sure hungry for one. Help! Help!
If there's one word in this video that I've been throwing around like nobody's business, it's atmosphere. It is Season 1's biggest strength after all. But Rock Bottom is on a whole nother level. Taking place in the deepest, darkest trenches of the ocean, it's the scariest place on Earth imaginable by humankind. The episode's atmosphere is fittingly creepy, bombarding the audience with visuals and sounds that were unlike any episode before it. They really took advantage of the fact that 80% of the ocean is still unexplored to this day. Rock Bottom doesn't forget that it's an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, though. So it pairs this dark atmosphere with a conflict as silly as SpongeBob getting pissed off that he keeps missing the bus home. Any episode that revolves around SpongeBob losing his cool and getting really pissed off is always going to be entertaining by default. Rock Bottom is a 10 out of 10, and number 2 on my Season 1 totem pole. This episode is anything but rock bottom for this season. I love it. I also love this little anglerfish guy. He just has a really cool design. I like it a lot. Now, I've never ever been to Texas myself, so I can't really comment on if the representation is accurate, but one of the writers of this episode was allegedly from Texas, so I think we're fine. This is the first time we've seen Sandy at her most unhinged, and it's awesome. You do not fuck with Texas, unless you want to end up like poor Patrick over here. This is one of the first episodes to use the nuclear explosion gag, and let's just say it exploded in popularity so much that it's now one of the show's longest running gags. But yeah, Texas is great. The first episode to really explore the country girl aspect of Sandy's character. 8 out of 10, number 19 on the old Texas buffet. There's also a scene in this episode where Sandy sings a song, but it's not actually Sandy singing, it's like some celebrity guy singing it. I don't know how to feel about that.
I wanna go home.
Walking Small is the only episode of the entire show, to my recollection, where Plankton tries to actually expand his restaurant empire. I wish we got more episodes like this. Yeah, he always tries to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula for the purposes of his restaurant, but we rarely ever see him focus on the restaurant itself. This is also the first episode of the entire show that doesn't revolve around Plankton trying to steal the formula for once. I hope you guys enjoy it because it's the only episode like this up until Season 5. Walking Small is great. It's kind of the inverse of F.U.N in a way. That episode was about SpongeBob trying to get Plankton to see his side of life, while this episode is the complete opposite, with Plankton trying to manipulate SpongeBob into acting more aggressive towards people. But of course he comedically fails at every turn because SpongeBob is just such a nice person. This is why SpongeBob and Plankton are one of my favorite character dynamics in the entire show. You can do stuff with these two that you can't do with any other two characters. These two are even more polar opposites than SpongeBob and Squidward are in a way. 9 out of 10. Number 14 on the list. I love the character dynamics in this show so much.
But what about airline food?
What?
Airline food, my gosh, what is up with that stuff? Thank you, good night.
Why does this show never do other holiday specials anymore outside of Halloween and Christmas? I think this is the last holiday-themed episode in the show that isn't those two. Is it because Halloween and Christmas are the two most marketable holidays of all time? Of course that's the reason, you stupid cunt. Fools in April feels like an episode that's doing the bare minimum to be good. I think it's stupid and lame how the entire story of the second half revolves around Squidward not being able to apologize to SpongeBob. Wow, how riveting. But the jokes are decent, the story is decent, the characters are decent, everything about Fools in April is decent. 7 out of 10, number 32 on the list. I guess it could have turned out worse considering April Fools is a repugnant holiday that shouldn't even exist. But again, this episode does the bare minimum to be good.
What would we do without Squidward?
Neptune's spatula fucking sucks! King Neptune's character is that he's an asshole. That is the beginning and end of his personality. Normally I don't mind jerk characters if they're written well and or if they're funny. I mean hell, literally half of the main characters are huge pricks and I really like all of them. But King Neptune is just so one-note and boring. Not to mention that this is one of the few Season 1 episodes where the slow pacing actually comes back to bite it in the ass. This episode takes so long to get started that by the time SpongeBob and King Neptune have their cook-off, there's only 4 minutes left! And the actual cook-off only lasts less than 2 minutes! I get the lesson they're trying to go for, you know, that it's better to spend a lot of time putting actual love and care into something than to rush out a bunch of garbage. But that doesn't mean it has to reflect in the episode's pacing. Why is the entire first half of this episode dedicated to King Neptune being oblivious and obnoxious running gags with Patrick? 3 out of 10. Number 41 on my list. The worst episode of SpongeBob Season 1. The pacing sucks. The humor sucks. King Neptune sucks. Is this a fan favorite of Season 1? Are people going to be mad at me because I don't like this one? Well, too bad!
Behold!
Whoopsie.
Yes, this is the episode that is infamous for Jimmy Neutron hijacking it on live TV and turning all the characters into puppets. This confirms that Jimmy Neutron is the most powerful character in fiction because he can fuck with other pieces of fiction. Hooky is an interesting one to me, as it's one of the only episodes to fully take advantage of the show's underwater setting. Like, this is a premise that could only work in a cartoon like SpongeBob. I wish we had more episodes like that. Honestly though, Hooky is also one of the only episodes that feels like it's more so trying to teach a lesson rather than being actually funny and entertaining. And don't get me wrong, it teaches that moral well. You know, don't go doing dangerous and stupid stuff for the sake of cheap thrills. That's a good lesson for kids. Outside of a couple scenes I like, such as Patrick saying,
Cheesy.
The rest of Hooky is pretty standard, but good standard. 7 out of 10, number 29 on my ranking. Not an episode that completely hooks me, but one that lures me in well enough. And we end Season 1, as well as the cell animation era of the show as a whole, on SpongeBob's first sequel episode. Why were the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes the only episodes to be numbered for a while? I don't know, something superhero movie trope probably. I must be out of my goddamn mind because like most sequels, this one isn't nearly as great as its predecessor. I feel like they could have and should have cut out the entire bit of SpongeBob winning the conch shell and just have the entire runtime be focused on SpongeBob spending a day with Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. Because that stuff is great, and fun, and funny, and honestly kinda r/wholesome. It's too bad it takes over half of the episode to get there. Also, I didn't mention this in the last Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode, but ever since I was a kid, I always found it really weird how, even though Mermaid Boy and Barnacle Man are some of the only recurring human characters on the show, they're the same size as most of the other sea creatures. What? Did they get size reduction surgery so they'll fight crime better? Sure, let's go with that. This is also the first episode to introduce recurring man, mermaid, and boy Barnacle villain character, the Dirty Bubble. In this episode, he's voiced by a guy named Charles Nelson Riley, who would sadly pass away in 2007. Every subsequent appearance of Dirty Bubble, he'd be voiced by Tom Kenny. Man and Boy 2 starts off pretty mid, and even kind of obnoxious, honestly, but it ends on a really strong note. 7 out of 10, number 30 on my ranking. And thus, Season 1 ends on an episode where we almost get to see a 70-year-old man bare-ass naked. Ew.
Mermaid Man.
Yes, Barnacle Boy?
We're not in the invisible boatmobile, are we?
Nope.
Hey guys, it's Luke, and you're at the end of the video now, yay! I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different for the ending for these, SpongeBob retrospectives. Instead of having, like, this whole big, edited conclusion like the rest of the video, I think it would be a nice little pace breaker just to kind of have these more laid-back, chill, couple-minute-long discussions about, you know, the season in said video. And it'll be kind of more of a podcast style where it's just kind of unscripted and I just kind of ramble on for a few minutes about, you know, whatever. And I actually made a tweet a while ago asking people's opinions, you know, on the season. So as I talk, the tweets will be shown on screen, basically. So yeah, SpongeBob Season 1 is really, really good. I mean, no fucking duh, right? Even then, like, despite how much people love it, I honestly think it's kind of underrated, mainly because people tend to, like, overshadow Season 1 with, like, Seasons 2 and 3. But if anything, I actually think Season 1 is, like, one of the better seasons of the show. I mean, most people do, but I mean, like, in terms of, like, pre-movie standards. I won't spoil it for future videos, as to why, but yeah, Season 1 just has this, like, really laid back, just really chill, like, cozy atmosphere. Like, Season 1 is definitely what I would call, like, a comfort cartoon. I mean, SpongeBob is a comfort cartoon for a lot of people, regardless of the season, but, like, Season 1 just hones in that energy more so than any other season. And it doesn't really focus on the comedy as much as, like, Seasons 2 and 3 do. It more so focuses on, like, you know, the underwater atmosphere and, like, the actual characters themselves, which is something I personally really, really like. And, like, yeah, obviously because it's the first season, it doesn't really, like... It's just kind of, like, establishing the show, you know? Like, obviously there are certain things about certain characters that get dropped kind of quickly. Like, you know, Mr. Krabs becomes, you know, way more money-hungry starting with Season 2. There was that thing I mentioned in Suds where Patrick and Sandy kind of had sort of a rivalry that, like, died after that episode. SpongeBob and Sandy being equally matched in karate was only ever a thing in Karate Choppers and then never again. You know, stuff like that. Like, obviously there are gonna be a few kinks that they end up ironing out, but yeah, Season 1 is, like, easily, like, the most unique season in all of SpongeBob. I mean, obviously. Like, just from an animation standpoint, it uses, like, you know, the cell animation, which would never be used in the show again after this, which obviously helps it stand out as well. I don't really know what else to say at this point, ironically enough, that hasn't already been said by myself in the video and like several other people in the SpongeBob community. Season 1 is, like, as far as first seasons go, is excellent. Like, some other cartoons usually take like a season or two to really get going, but SpongeBob just kind of hit the ground running in terms of like what it wanted to be. Like, it knew what it wanted to be like almost immediately, and that's honestly something that I really respect, like, a lot. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You know, all that fucking stupid ass like end of YouTube video, YouTuber spiel. And I will end the video by showing you guys the finalized Season 1 ranking. So, yeah. I'll see you guys in the next one.